acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. We will call this regular council meeting for February 18th, 2025 to order. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Council, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? Administration, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do have one 6.5 Community Peace Officer Command.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Councillor Hawes.
I'd like to move to add CAO Panasic's addition CPO. What was it?
CPO Officer Command.
Officer Command, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, the motion on the floor is that council add item 6.5, the CPO Command issue, to the agenda this evening on the session. We'll just wait for the secretary. And for the secretary, that was 6.5 Community Peace Officer Command. So council, motion on the floor is to add item 6.5 Community Peace Officer Command to the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councilors, please vote now. Councilor Stashik voting by hand in favor, and that motion is carried unanimously. We're looking for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Thank you. Councilor Chambers.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the February 18th, 2025 council meeting agenda as amended.
Thank you, Councilor Chambers. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adopt the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councilors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Let's do item section 3 of the agenda, council minutes for adoption, and item 3.1. Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adopt regular council February 4th, 2025 minutes and the committee of the whole February 11th, 2025 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adopt the regular council meeting on February 4th, 2025 and the minutes for the committee of the whole meeting February 11th, 2025. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councilors, please vote now. Motion is carried unanimously. That will take us to section 4 of this agenda this evening, citizens minute with council. Secretary, are there any citizens signed up for minute with council this evening?
No, there's none tonight.
Thank you, Secretary. That will take us to section 5, delegations and presentations, and item 5.1, Alberta Forest Products Association, presented by Nicole Van. Yes, please. Should be now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for having me. As mentioned, my name is Nicole Galambos. I work for the Alberta Forest Products Association. For those of you not familiar with our association, we represent forest companies across Alberta, more than 40 members strong, that produce everything from lumber, paper to bioenergy and engineered wood products. We have representatives from Mondi in the room. We have Paul and Kevin Anderson from Mondi behind me here, and Hal Jackson from West Fraser. Both Mondi and West Fraser are members of Alberta Forest Products Association. So today I was hoping to chat with you folks on some pressing trade challenges facing our sector, particularly some of the softwood lumber, everything trade duties and tariffs, in addition to emerging US trade barriers and global competition. Things are really high. Alberta's forest sector contributes significantly to our economy, yet it's increasingly at risk due to factors beyond our control. namely trade and tariffs, if anybody has turned on or listened to the news of late. There's many regulatory hurdles also facing our industry, but we do have some solutions that we'd like to chat a little bit about today. So we'd like to mitigate the risks, and we're looking for your support on some ways that we can do this. So our sector here in Alberta supports over 30,000 high-quality, high-paid forest industry jobs. Most of these jobs are located in rural Alberta, and I don't have to go too far to showcase to you what that looks like for a town like Hinton. In addition to direct employment with forest industry, there's also multipliers, so construction, trade, road building. We had a report commissioned by PricewaterhouseCoopers this last year. In Alberta, $2.8 billion of direct employment income from our sector in Alberta, and 14.1 billion in economic activity attributed to Alberta's forest sector. The good, the bad, and the ugly about that is that 50% of our products are exported to the United States. So trade is a very key and critical component of our sector and industry here in Alberta. So the rising barriers and threats of trade really challenging our sector, risking the livelihoods of many rural communities, including Hinton, where we do rely on forest industry for a lot of our employment and opportunities. So the elephant in the room, trade barriers and tariffs. Right now, there's been a long-standing softwood lumber trade dispute between Canada and the United States. And any softwood lumber we export is currently seeing a 14% tariff. Before any of the rhetoric with Trump and Trump tariff talks, we were expecting that softwood lumber duty to jump to 30% by the summer. So if we see on top of that, the across the board 25% tariffs that President Trump is threatening, that could put a 50% trade imbalance in terms of tariffs on our product. I think anybody can see that that will have major effects and make it nearly impossible for some of our operators in our mills to compete. We do have a few items that we believe the government of Alberta can do to support our sector. And we're hoping for your support in helping us advocate with the province of Alberta on 6 items. The first is the continued advocacy sector in the United States. That consists of advocacy against excessive duties, tariffs, and threats to our industry, as well as education. A lot of folks maybe don't understand that the US doesn't produce enough lumber to meet their domestic demands, and that the US home building requires Canadian lumber with or without tariffs. And so to have tariffs of this magnitude imposed on America is essentially a tax on US consumers. So we'd really like support and help from the government of Alberta to continue with those educational messages, as well as to push back against any and all unfair trade barriers, including the existing softwood lumber trade barriers or any new emerging tariffs barriers to trade. We really think that Alberta has a role to play here, working alongside the federal government to push into the United States and get some of those key messages and advocacy efforts in place. The other item is the American jobs associated with it. There are thousands of American jobs that produce Kleenex, paper, tissue from Canadian pulp. And I think advocacy efforts showcasing the effect on industry in America associated with these tariffs is really important. The second thing the government of Alberta can do, particularly at these critical times, is to help keep our existing regulatory costs low. If we look west to the province of BC, we can see the impacts of excessive and strict regulation and what that can do in terms of mill closures and job losses. We're hoping the government of Alberta can learn from this and work to keep our timber dues competitive, the regulatory process streamlined and efficient so that our mills can have a competitive base from which to operate. These cost manageable and predictable will at least help as we try to take on the challenge of barriers with our major trade partner. The third item seems pretty simple, is to diversify our markets here at home with Alberta Wood in Alberta under a Build with Wood framework. So we've been hoping to diversify our domestic use of wood and really are calling on the government of Alberta to adopt a Build with Wood Act, similar to that in Quebec and British Columbia. We can learn from their successes, and we can take the opportunity to use our own wood products in our own backyard, helping us to eliminate some of the challenges with domestic trade and international trade. There's a slide here. That's great. This is Vancouver. It's a 12-story building, but mass timber and building with wood is also something that's adopted here in Hinton. At the Hinton Guild, the Performing Arts Theatre, there's mass timber use there. There's mass timber use in this building. So adopting a Build with Wood First Act would really help us to diversify our markets here in Alberta, in Canada, and help to protect us from some of these challenges abroad. Number 4, advocate for federal financial assistance. I love the comms team. And this slide deck. So as I mentioned, we've been having softwood lumber trade agreement challenges with the United States for quite some time. There's currently $10 billion of Canadian lumber locked up in the US Treasury Board as a result of these tariffs. So right now, in a time when our industries could really benefit from having that cash back in their pocket, and we're looking for the government of Alberta to pressure the federal government to create a federal loan backstop program where we can leverage those assets for immediate term investments and help us get us through these rocky times. Five of 6, in case you're wondering, we're nearing the end. Market diversification is not working in our favor, with 50% of all exports going to the United States. So we'd like the government of Alberta to help us explore alternative and emerging markets so that we can reduce this reliance. AFPA has identified markets with growth potential in India, the Philippines, China, Japan, and Korea. We're hoping that the provincial government can help us on trade missions, promoting Alberta, promoting the sustainability of Alberta's forest products, and to join us in international agreements and partnership opportunities. This will obviously help in the short term and long term to build our resiliency if we look to diversify our market share and our trade partners across the globe. The one challenge with this approach is the need for reliable transportation. So currently we have some challenges with getting our product to market. We're pretty landlocked. We've got roads, we've got rail, and that's kind of where we're at. AFPA is an active member in the Community Rail Advocacy Alliance, and is something that we'd encourage the town of Hinton to look into. Our final ask of the provincial government is to implement a forest manufacturing tax credit. This will help our industry remain competitive, invest in innovation and new technology. This forest manufacturing tax credit is in the current Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade's mandate letter. It is modeled after the agro-processing investment tax credit. So the government of Alberta is aware of this initiative, is supportive of this initiative, but we need action now. The times are just too tough, too critical, and we're really looking for an expedited movement on that tax credit. And that is the end of my slide deck. I have some business cards I can leave here with you. I really appreciate the time that you have made available for Alberta Forest Products Association. Our industry is strong, it's vibrant, it's just facing challenging times. And we really think that with your support, we can leverage the government of Alberta to get through these times and to keep our industry prosperous into the future.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Gallimbo. And we'll go to Councillor Race.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Have you started a conversation with the government already on this? And if so, where are you at?
Yes, so Minister Lowen is a really great ally of the forest industry. So we have been working with Minister Lowen and his staff. We have penned a letter to Premier Smith with these 6 action items. Put Minister Lowen beforehand and copied Minister Lowen on those items. So we are trying to work all angles to get support for some of these immediate actions.
One more quick one.
Go right ahead.
Have you met with our MLA, Martin?
MLA Long is a really great supporter as well. Similar presentation to this was done in White Court within the last 2 weeks. And Minister Long was aware of that, and Minister Long has been copied on all of our letters advocacy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you. This question more for administration, I guess, but has Alberta municipalities come out with anything for advocacy? Because I mean, I know we go through all of the resolutions and things, but I mean, this is something that's just come up. I haven't seen anything, but is there any plans for Alberta municipalities advocacy for groups as yourself, businesses with these tariffs? That's
Panasic.
Through the mayor, other than some education type things, I'm not aware of anything else or any specific advocacy.
okay. So following up then, is that something that we could also do? Because I mean, they've got all these connections as well, and have some influence. So is that something else that we can do as a municipality to request that Alberta municipalities start looking into what their role in this could be?
Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, yes, I would require a motion to look into it, but we do have, and I think it's March 6th, 7th, and 8th is the spring Alberta municipality session. So typically emergent resolutions that come forward at that time. So that could be an opportunity there.
Okay, thank you.
Council, anything further for our presenter? Councillor Taylor.
So you're talking about what the government of Alberta can do. What can a town of Hinton do? Exactly.
We're definitely looking for your support in the form of a letter. If you are in agreement with any or all of those 6 actions, to support them with the government of Alberta. And we've been asked by previous councils if we could help in the form of what that draft letter might look like, and we certainly can. But essentially looking for a loud and numerous volume of rural Alberta communities to support and say these initiatives are important.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to, I'd like to motion that council direct administration and the mayor to draft a letter to the provincial government that highlights these 6 recommendations and any whatever other wording needs to be done. But I'd like to that the letter is draft. Make that motion. I look to administration for what wording is appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes, and Secretary, if we can get that up on the screen when you're ready, so we can adjust the wording as required. Councillor Hawes, you can help out at any point.
Yeah, I guess, what did we call them? Recommendations from Alberta forestry industry.
Forest products.
So forest products. Yep.
You're happy with
I
that?
think if that's clear enough for administration.
Through the mayor, yes, that is.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to make that motion and whatever advocacy we can do with the Alberta government. Yeah, because I mean, this is going to affect everybody. So thank you. Thanks, Mr.
Veteran Affairs, the council direct administration to draft a letter to the provincial government highlighting the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you say you have a template or a draft that you could assist us with?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, the motion on the floor again, that council direct administration to draft a letter to the provincial government highlighting the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association. Is there any further discussion? CEO Panasic.
Mr. Mayor, just a slight wording thing in reading it again. Instead of highlighting the provincial government or direct administration to draft a letter to the provincial government in support of the six recommendations, just to take a position as council.
Thank you, CEO Panasic, for that wording change suggestion. Councillor Hawes, do you have any issues with that wording change? Sorry, Councillor, I'm going to take that as a friendly amendment to the wording unless there's any opposition from council. Any councillors opposed to the wording change? So the motion on the floor, council, is that council direct administration to draft a letter to the provincial government in support of the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association. Is there any further discussion from council? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further? Councillor Taylor.
Something about this March thing and the opportunity there.
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, yes, in March is the Alberta Municipalities Leadership Caucus. So they do allow for emergent resolutions to come forward in the spring.
We submit a resolution and we ask for the support of all of the Alberta municipalities.
That's correct.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be very useful.
Okay.
I'm sure AFP would be very happy to help support that resolution drafting of.
Councillor Taylor.
I don't know the wording, but I'd like to put a motion that we try to get a.
May I work with you to suggest some wording here? I think you're looking to direct administration to draft a resolution for Municipal Leaders Caucus and bring it back to a future meeting of council.
Yeah, right, but for presentation in March.
For presentation at Municipal Leaders Caucus in March, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Secretary, I'm just to put that on the screen. Get Councillor Taylor to ensure the wording is to his liking.
We need your help.
You still in there, Councillor Taylor? Did you have further
Will
questions?
this be one of those things where we need, this is so quick, we wouldn't be able to get support from some of the surrounding towns, or we could do that. We still have time for that.
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, it's a short timeline, but I'm sure we could find a like-minded forestry town that would support us on this. And I could certainly work with Nicole, who I'm sure could point us in the right direction of municipalities who have already supported this.
Thank you.
Gonna add, we've already made this presentation to Prairie Big Lakes, and our next up, Edson, Grand Prairie, High Level, Peace River, Mackenzie County, MD of Lesser Slave Lake, and Northern Sunrise County. So we will be endeavoring to give this same presentation to all those folks, hopefully before March.
Thank you for that extra information. Now, to as it's being drafted, Councillor Taylor, take a look at this. The council direct administration to draft a resolution on the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association for the Municipal Leaders Caucus in March of 2025.
Well, I'll draft a resolution on supporting the recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association. Did you want the word supporting there?
It's your motion, so it can absolutely be the word supporting in there.
Otherwise, it's good.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to draft a resolution on supporting the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association for the Municipal Leaders Caucus in March 2025. And we'll go for a discussion. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my understanding that Alberta Munis will only support a resolution that affects all the municipalities in Alberta. Does this indirectly affect every municipality in Alberta?
Do you want to take that one? Not a question for our presenter today.
Through the mayor, it has to be applicable to all or most of the municipalities, but no one issue will always affect everybody. So no, this is broad enough. The only other municipalities is they all very specific local issues to come forward as a resolution. It has to have has to be wider and more applicable to urban municipalities generally.
I guess I was looking at our dear speaker for you to say, yes, indirectly it does. Like, could you imagine every municipality in Alberta speaking to this? That would be powerful.
I think it would resonate with most municipalities that have direct forest industry jobs as well as indirect, a lot of manufacturing and process and transportation. In Edmonton and Calgary, we have resin providers that provide the glue to make panel board. So it is a topic that I think resonates across Alberta. And there's a significant tax base coming from the forest sector that impacts every Albertan. I think it was 800 million provincial taxes last year alone. It's directly to touch all persons in Alberta.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be in favor of this. I think, every opportunity we can get to get support. As to the question about indirectly, I mean, this is just the first thing. Well, isn't the first. The United States have already put tariffs of other things. This is, seems to be a domino unfortunate effect that's happening. So, standing our ground on one industry, I think will help also all of the entire province as well, and others sending a clear message to the United States, what our feelings are and thoughts are on this as well. So I think, this does affect the entire province and across Canada. So I'll be in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Taylor.
I would think this supported, like we did get a resolution through 6 or 9 months ago on the provincial fire committee and getting municipalities involved in that. So this is at least as broad as that, and that went through the municipal association and got strong support.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is that Council direct administration to draft a resolution on supporting the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association for the Municipal Leaders Caucus in March 2025. Is there any further discussion? Can I see that?
Thank you. So I just pulled up the Municipal Leaders Caucus and the process for submitting. So your RFD must be submitted along with proof of council endorsement by the end of the day, February 18th. So that is today. I think we're okay to proceed with this motion if this is the intent that council wants to go with. It just, our first step really would be to submit this motion probably by the end of this meeting and to request an extension for this process. So there's no guarantees, but we can still see if we can get an extension.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. And with that new information, if you were to follow that process, would you need this motion to be changed in any way to take those actions this evening?
I think this is fine. If there is anything specific that they would need, they'll have to let us know. But I think if they're willing to provide us with some, with a little bit of an extension and even possibly an endorsement through, say, a committee of the whole for that process with a promise to get them a formalized endorsement, we should be okay. So I think I'm okay with the motion for now, and then we'll just see what Alberta municipality says.
Council, once again, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to draft a resolution on supporting the 6 recommendations from the Alberta Forest Products Association for the Municipal Leaders Caucus in March 2025. Is there any further discussion from council? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. CEO Panasic, do you need us to take a recess or anything for you to get that off? Or
Through the mayor, I think we can keep going. I'll delegate that on the fly. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor, is there anything further for item 5.1 and our presenter this evening? Councilor Taylor.
I had a question. You said that the 14% tariff was going to go up to 30, and that was separate from any of the rhetoric that's going on right now. What wouldn't be going on there that would cause it to go to 30?
Yeah, so I'm not sure the process that's these are calculated, so of anyone even knowledgeable. But I know they regularly look at doing a big analysis of trying to find unfair practices. And so they had forecasted this raise to 30% before Trump was ever elected. So it's not part of the Trump administration. It's part of the broader Canadian softwood lumber trade dispute that's been going on for over a decade. Certainly share more after if you'd like some more details.
I think that's good for now.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Council, is there anything further for our presenter today? Thank you very much, Nicole. You have a wonderful day. That takes us to item 5.2 on the agenda this evening, and it's another delegation presentation, the Hinton Food Bank, presented by Bernie Kreiner.
Thank you very much. Mayor and members of council, the Hinton Food Bank operation is also a strong and dynamic enterprise, and we don't face a threat like you just heard, but we have a trend that's concerning that now that we have our statistics for the end of 2024, I wanted to share with you. First of all, I want to talk about the strong and dynamic enterprise. We are really blessed in this community by having amazing volunteers and corporate support. Financially, that's been a lifesaver, and council and your decision to contribute this year is very much appreciated. In fact, after my presentation, I want to provide you with this poster, which hangs with 30 others in our lobby. All the 30 people are operations and businesses that either give us funding or give us in-kind services equivalent to at least $2,000. We want to always recognize and appreciate them. The bottom of our website, all those businesses are also scrolled on an ongoing basis. So that's the great support we receive from a community. So what's been going on? Two things. One is we began a new program this past fall, shortly after the Jasper fire, called Food Recovery Friday. We actually received from some of the grocery stores in town, not just once, but now twice a month, twice a week, their lightly bruised fruit, vegetables, and nearly expired dairy, and provide it to the community on Friday between 5 and 5:30. It sits out in our lobby for anyone in the community to feel free to pick up from. And we are seeing about 55 families a week, maybe about half to 2/3 are our clients, but just citizens at large. They're dropping in and taking advantage of that. We think, saving about 10 tons of garbage. The other thing is the statistics are now very much in line with the national trends. The number of people using food banks in our community is now 100 families a week. And that's doubled in the last 5 years, which is similar to the national statistics that have recently been released. And so the question is, how can we work on that? I'm really pleased there are local businesses that make an effort to employ the hard to employ. And that is an important initiative, and that really should be expanded upon. It's very interesting as well because there's now the first time ever, I believe, it's a candidate for the Liberal leadership federally is putting forward that they're supportive of the guaranteed basic income concept for Canadians, which would eliminate 30 specific grant programs that are provincial and federal level and replace it with one guaranteed income program for all Canadians. It's going to cost a bit more, but it streamlines a ton of things that might be relevant to the people that we deal with at the food banks. So those are two things that are useful initiatives worth being aware of and monitoring, paying attention to. We are having our AGM as we always do, we've always done it just before volunteer appreciation. Right? Because we wanted basically community appreciation. That's how much support we get. We've actually changed the name and made the AGM the end of the title now. Because people don't like to come to AGMs. They're worried about getting elected to positions. But the community appreciation and AGM event is going to happen Monday, the 14th of April. I submitted some other information in the 2-page document, and I'm open to your questions, but again, want to restate and stress that we so much appreciate your decision beginning in 2025 to support the Hinton Food Bank. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kreiner. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kreiner. Yeah, those numbers are staggering when you look at over the years. I guess my question is when the mayor and I visited that one evening, we had a conversation in regards to that maybe some of the customers are on other assistance and not working with others. Say, for example, I'm just gonna pick one, AISH.
Yeah.
And they're on assistance, but are still utilizing food banks. So if there's other funding sources to try and reduce the amount. So I'm curious on if there may have been any follow-up on that, or is there anything that we as a town can help to support the food bank and having those conversations, or is this a, letter to the MLA? But I just think that if these services are not providing enough support, financial support, that they're still relying on the food bank, then to me, the responsibility lies somewhere else and takes some pressure off the food bank. So I don't know, has there been any further discussion on that?
Yeah, the specific to AISH, about a third of our clients are AISH clients as well. And the truth of the matter is, as we sit down with most of our clients and review their case files, February, March, roughly, the biggest statement that we're hearing is that AISH isn't enough to cover their living expenses.
Okay.
And that's the shortfall. And it's been an up and down situation. Some years there's been a major increase in AISH, and other years it's been frozen for a period of few years with cost of living. So it's an up and down thing, but in truth, that's what we hear from our clients. And we're hearing that about some of the other support programs.
Okay.
And about 1/10 of our clients receive no support from any government programs at all.
Right.
And-
So if I can follow up, because I mean, the food bank is a large organization that I'm sure that are also other communities are facing the things. So is the food bank organization, are they at all looking into advocacy for those programs to, because I mean, yeah, they're not accounting for inflation. They're not accounting for all of those different things. I'm guessing they just, they look at the funding source and after there, but is a larger organization planning to have some sort of advocacy?
Yeah, the national organization of which we're a member is very active at advocating for housing assistance and subsidy, because that is one of the key elements of shortfalls for folks that come to food banks. But their main focus has been for over 15 years to advance the basic guaranteed basic income. Believing that instead of having specialized grants for housing and transportation, and I mean, the list is pretty long, that one income program, which keeps track of and then adjusts to the cost of living across Canada, would be the best sound long-term practice. I know it might sound a bit socialist for a country like Canada, but it would certainly reduce a large number of issues in our communities and make things better. So there's advocacy going on at other levels. We are not that actively involved at the local level on these matters.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hawes. Council, anything further for Mr. Kreiner today? Thank you very much for coming in, Mr. Kreiner. We're going to take a short 5-minute recess so we can get a good photo with Mr. Kreiner and his poster here with me for the website. So everybody take a quick 5-minute break. We'll be right back.
I know. It's still like, that's the thing that I was like, oh, yes. I'm not suggesting. Yeah, sure.
For February 18th, 2025. We are on section 6 of the agenda this evening, action items and item 6.1, Crown Land Readiness. CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So this topic's coming to you for, I believe, the third time, but we had spoken about the process for taking Crown land offline. Then we had spoken about the land that we wanted to pursue. So both of those elements have been included in the briefing report, starting on page 32 of your package. But really what this process is about at a very high level is looking at a way that we can start to take Crown land pieces that we feel are necessary offline and getting it into private hands sooner. Knowing that the barrier to entry with Crown lands is the process and upfront time that it requires to get it converted into a private land parcel. Most developers or investors are not willing to spend 2 years into a process that is riddled with some uncertainties on the end result. So this would see us playing a role in that entire process that takes on some of these processes on ahead of time, with the understanding that we would be in carrying control of these parcels. We would have the ability to sell at market value, and we would recoup our investments both in time and in out-of-pocket expenses on the back end. So that should all be covered in the briefing note as it's attached, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Talk about this lots. I'd like to go with the recommended action. The council approve the Crown Land Readiness Briefing Report as presented. I think it's a good idea. I hope that we've talked to somebody in advance at an appropriate level in order to know if this is even possible or not, so that we've got at least some chance of success at a decision-making level. But I hope that's happened, but I would ask that question again. But
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is that council approve the Crown Land Readiness Briefing Report as presented. Further discussion. Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further for item 6.1 on the agenda this evening? We'll move to item 6.2, Huntington Healthcare Foundation Contract Amendment. CAO Panasic. CAO Panasic?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just getting to the right page.
Yeah.
So Mayor, member of council, we had spoken about this topic at a committee of the whole meeting, but what this is intended to do is to take some of our committed funding that we had provided to the Hinton Healthcare Foundation to support the clinic, and utilizing some of that funding to go towards the attraction or the and recruitment of physicians by the way of hiring a private recruiter to assist in that work. So we spoke about, the typical models of recruitment firms, but typically it's a small amount of money up front, with the rest coming on the back end once a physician's hired. That physician will be required to work in the clinic. We have based on our last meeting, we have made that amendment to reflect it in the Hinton Healthcare Foundation contract to make sure that was in there. So we see this as we are recommending to approve it as presented as a low risk way to look at attracting physicians.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council approve the Healthcare Foundation contract amendment as presented. If I can speak to it.
Go right ahead.
I think this is actually a very good way to go. The reluctance, obviously, because healthcare does not fall under the preview of the government. But to me, this is a proactive way to to hire the experts in this field. I look at this very similar to recruiting of our CAO. Yes, we can do it internally, but having a recruiter that has their pulse on the area, having the contacts that they have, so that they can find people and bring them to our community and entice them, I think is the best way to go. And I think it's we keep the lights on, we keep the, but unfortunately, we're seeing the clinic in a much even more difficult position than they were in before the funding. So this is a way of moving things forward, I believe, and making that clinic provide the service that our citizens need for healthcare. So thank you.
As council, the motion on the floor is that council approve the Hinton Healthcare Foundation contract amendment as presented. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councilors, please vote now.
In favor.
I see
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor.
Magoon here. Councilor Magoon, are you in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councilor Magoon in favor. By hand. Thank you. And that motion is carried unanimously. Councilor Taylor.
Is there any new information on the $200,000 we're asking for the provincial government to help cover some of this?
Theo Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, no, not as of yet.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Thank you, Theo Panasic. Council, is there anything further for item 6.2 on the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing, we'll move to item 6.3. Recreation Center Councilor Ostashik. And this was a notice of motion. We will go to Councilor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to this notice of motion, I would like to move that council direct administration to prepare a report for a committee of the whole meeting before the end of the first quarter of 2025 regarding the inclusion of a plebiscite on the construction or major reconstruction of a recreation center in Hinton to be conducted in conjunction with the Town of Hinton municipal election on October 20th. 2020. I would speak to it if I may.
You may.
Okay. There was some background information that was included along with the notice of motion. I think the background information pretty adequately explains the reasoning and the thought process and maybe the practical process for how this would move forward and be included as part of the election this fall. To sum it up, though, I think in short, this is probably one of the biggest expenditures that the town of Hinton would ever consider undertaking as a single cost expenditure. I think it's really important that incoming council has the best information and best knowledge of the level of support from the Hinton citizens as they possibly can. And I think by tying it in with the municipal election, that's probably going to be a pretty strong way to maximize the amount of feedback that council could be able to get to be able to make some really informed decisions on what the future of the rec center is moving forward. With that, I'd just like to look forward to council's support to see this motion move forward. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ostashik. Council, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to prepare the whole meeting before the end of the first quarter of 2025 regarding the inclusion of a plebiscite on the construction of or major reconstruction of a recreation center in Hinton to be conducted in conjunction with the Town of Hinton municipal election on October 20th, 2025. Councilor Taylor.
That's a benefit. My question would be, would you put all the options from the, let's just keep it going and maintaining it to brand new rec center option? Would you include all those options and all the way in between? Because I see that end of the option scale as difficult for the average taxpayer to swallow in light of the current costs of the water treatment plant.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Councilor, but
So as indicated in the sample wording section, and keeping in mind this, that this motion allows this to come back to committee of the whole, so that council then owns it, can discuss it, modify it in any way. But my suggestion and my thoughts on it were to offer options that do run the entire gamut, right from doing nothing all the way up to complete new construction. Could be complete reconstruction of the existing facility. But I think it's important to offer all those options when this plebiscite comes forward so that we can get a true understanding of what level of support the citizens of Hinton are willing to put forward to the incoming council.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be in support of this because as Councillor Stashik said, this is predominantly going to come back to a committee of the whole so we can have a future conversation about it. But it's definitely one to have. I know that, you know, some community members are a little less optimistic because of course may get skewed numbers, but I appreciate some of the background content, that the fact that these are not binding votes either. So I mean, we see what kind of appetite there is in there. So I'm in complete favor of this. As Councillor Stashik said, this would be one of the biggest expenditures in the community. I also think it's a valuable time to do it. We're going to be having a strategic plan of this council, looking at the costs potentially that we're looking at, depending on the type of build and what that would be to the community. So I think combined with that and that information, this is a perfect time to ask the community how they want to see things move forward on this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, the reason for my support is that we've been discussing this since 2007. That's when the Bar Rider report went. That's 17 years. The only thing that we would have done different in 17 years, other than spend money on studies and look at the studies year after year, is doing what we're doing here, which is empower the 25 to 29 council to act in whatever way it is. If it's in favor of the full cost, or it's in favor of just maintaining what we've got, that council will be empowered if they choose to follow what the plebiscite says. That's the only thing I see that we would have done different in 17 years. So thank you for putting it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to prepare a report for a committee of the whole meeting before the end of the first quarter of 2025 regarding the inclusion of a plebiscite on the construction or major reconstruction of a recreation center in Hinton to be conducted in conjunction with the town of direction on October 20th, 2025. Council, is there any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillor, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would there be any opportunities for some education of citizens prior to the plebiscite vote so that they know exactly what they're voting for?
Theo Panasic.
Through the mayor to Councillor Race, yes, that's typically a part of the process, is that comms and that education piece for whatever topic we're discussing.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Race's question, if I may.
Go ahead.
That is a section of background information regarding public engagement considerations. So I'm looking forward to that coming forward as part of the report that comes to committee of the whole, so we can better understand what could be undertaken to make sure that citizens do have a clear understanding of what each of those options would mean in terms of municipal taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council, is there anything further for item 6.3 on the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing, we'll move to item 6.4, Rural Transit Solutions Grant Letter of Support. Theo Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn that over to Ms. Way.
Ms. Way.
Thank you, Mayor Nissen, through to the remainder of council this evening. Dating back to 2018, through the Dantech Public Transportation Review, administration in the town of Hinton have been making incremental adjustments to the transit level of service, ultimately culminating with the approval of the level of service in December of 2024. Earlier conversations regarding the buses for the transit system, administration had noted that grant funds may become available. We've since identified some federal funding that would support up to 80% of the capital costs to revitalize our infrastructure as associated with transit. So the matter before you tonight is simply to seek a letter of support for our grant application. And I can take any questions at this time.
Ms. Way. Counselor Taylor.
Does applying for this grant, because we're talking a number of buses, does that increase the costs of running our bus system in any way? Or will the costs stay the same or lower?
Ms. Way.
That question, Councillor Taylor, through to the remainder of council this evening. At this point, we're spending approximately 130,000 a year just on our contract for the buses. We do not anticipate, especially while securing the grant. So obviously the infrastructure would be significantly cheaper. We do not anticipate increased costs for operating the transit system.
Thank you, Ms. Way. Follow up.
But on the long term, this, we won't have to make payments on the buses, right?
Ms. Way.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Through to the member of council. If we purchase the buses outright, the additional cost, as noted in the report, would be in the $30,000 range for maintenance. However, we anticipate that we're already paying a significant portion of that as part of the existing contract for the maintenance of our leased buses at this time. We also know from the Dantech study that gas remains the cheapest option. So that's likely the route that is the route that we will go with these buses.
Thank you, Ms. Way. Counselor Taylor. Counselor Taylor. Back.
So if we go for this grant, are we tying ourselves into any sort of green bus technology that Ottawa is trying to ram down our throat?
This way?
It's not the polite way to word it, but.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. No, it is not locking us into any green initiatives. As I previously just mentioned, we do know that, especially in this climate, gas remains the cheapest option.
So we can go gas.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor.
Are there any conditions that we should be aware of that is tied to this grant money?
This way?
That tie us in any way?
Through to council, obviously it's never good optics to have a grant and be awarded and not accept it. So other than that, no, there's nothing tying us executing the grant in a particular way other than what we've submitted. For example, the bike racks, the GPS on the buses, we have to do those things as associated with the grant because that's what we submitted for. But no, there's no hidden small print.
Thanks for your help.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council approves issuing a letter supporting the town of Hinton's Rural Transit Solutions Fund application as presented. And if I can quickly speak to it, one of the things that's always for me not set right is the fact that we're using these buses and spending a lot of money. I think having these in-house, I think is a better option for our town. So, we can do more internally then and not have to rely on the contractors. So, the fact that it's not going to increase the amount, but potentially also decrease, I think, in the operation of this, I think that's the way to go. And the fact that we have a grant that can support that and not, fully on our own, I think is the right time for that. I'm assuming too, these buses that we are leasing and everything are also getting of age as well. So those are some things to consider. And I believe if I may, we did extend our contract for a bit of time with the leaser, kind of for this reason, I think at the same time. Is that correct, administration?
This way?
That's correct. We did do a small extension. I'd have to double check on the length of time. Did not have access to that agreement today through the network.
Thank you. That's, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, the motion on the floor is the council approves issuing a letter supporting the Town of Hinton's Rural Transit Solutions Fund application as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is supported, is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further for item 6.4 on the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing, we will move to item 6.5, the Community Peace Officer Command and CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this over to Ms. Way.
This way.
CAO through to the remainder of council this evening. Apologies, this one is on the fly for you this evening. You have the letter in front of you or received a copy earlier today. Ultimately, the province is requesting that we align command of our community peace officers under the command and control of the RCMP for a undetermined temporary period of time. Ultimately, the goal is to add approximately 10,000 individuals to support 3 initiatives. One being border security at the provincial level, the second being organized crime, specifically as related to fentanyl, and the third being social and civil disorder. This is something where the province is ultimately seeking to demonstrate a coordinated approach to community policing. This is something that's done consistently within larger centers. I have reached out to Staff Sergeant Frigamini to further kind of issue a support, an attachment to the letter that we will be potentially issuing back to the minister that outlines 4 or so of our current practices as related to joint enforcement. So in speaking with her, we don't anticipate that it'll be overly burdensome as we only currently have the two CPOs. So taking those 2 staff members, so to speak, will not at this point be overly burdensome. I can take any questions at this time.
Council? Councillor Taylor.
Just a little nervous about doing this on the fly without Sergeant Fragomani here to explain to us how our bylaw priorities are going to be followed. That's all. That's my concern. And to have to do this because somebody sent a letter saying they want it on February 19th. Just on my preferences, that's Sergeant Fragomani here to address this question, give us a week's advance notice like it should have properly been given. And let's talk about it with any topic. I don't see why we have to do this just because Deputy Minister Huzafritz, he wants us to do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have a lot of the same concerns as Councillor Taylor. Having this dumped upon us at the 11th hour. I have lots of logistical questions about how chain of command would work and roles that the peace officers would play in supporting the CMP. Lots of questions that we don't have time to get answered. So my question to administration then is, if this doesn't pass today, what are going to be the ramifications and the implications of that?
The Panasic.
Through the mayor. Just based on the wording of the letter, this was I think a little bit of a reaction to some of the priorities of south of the border and looking to address those in a quickly. But from our perspectives, we believe that this is primarily optics. But for some of the logistics, for council, I would say that from a governance view of this, we should know that there's likely less focus on municipal bylaws and probably more focus on supporting the RCMP for the purpose of those priorities that Ms. Way had outlined. So, I think that's where council should stay because the logistics are not going to be figured out for the time. Contracts, their CPOs are very prescriptive and lots of the clauses are prescribed by act. We have legal duties as an employer of CPOs where we will not be transferring any of those. We'll probably be looking at a mechanism like an MOU that they work together and they check in with the hall to see if there's anything, but we will not be turning over any of the rights as an employer until we have a lot more information.
Thank you, CO Panasic. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of background for council. This letter came to us late Friday afternoon after our agendas had already gone out, and over the weekend, I know a number of communities and Alberta munis were actively working to figure out what the details exactly of this letter are. The result of that, this morning there is a hasty webinar called with Minister Ellis and mayors from right across the province. And Minister Ellis this morning really wanted to bring a lot of perspective to this letter. So my understanding, and Ms. Way was at this meeting with us today, and that's where our information is coming from, but my understanding is this is specifically a response to the 25% tariff threat made by the administration a few weeks ago. Nothing to do with the latest round of tariffs. There's the 25% tariff response prepared. In that response, apparently the Prime Minister somewhere along the line has promised to mobilize 10,000 personnel to address the fentanyl crisis. And as part of the Team Canada approach to doing this over the next 20 days, which was reiterated a number of times, the federal government and the provinces are focusing on three pillars: the border, organized crime, and social disorder. And in looking at how they're going to muster 10,000 personnel in a 20-day time period, the idea of the province was we will enlist, so to speak, community peace officers in communities under the jurisdiction of the policing authority in those jurisdictions. The police, in conjunction with the additional manpower from the CPOs, will be able to take on additional task force duties working towards alleviating the fentanyl crisis within our communities. So it is not the intention today for our CPOs to be deployed anywhere. They would be working within our community as they do today. My understanding is with this, the difference in our structure would be currently our CPOs, I believe, report to our DEM. Our police chief reports to our DEM, our Director of Emergency Management. This would have our CPOs first reporting to our police chief, and then our police chief reporting to our DEM. And once again, it was reiterated a number of times that this is part of the Team Canada approach as a response to the 25% tariff response. The other interesting things that came out of that webinar today was a number of mayors, especially from the city of Calgary, the city of Edmonton, the bigger centers, reiterated that this is already what these communities are doing. They've already amalgamated command of their peace officers with their police force and integrated with social services because this is in the direction that these centers are going to, we're already going to start alleviating some of the street level social disorder that they were seeing in their communities. And this is in alignment with a lot of the things that are already happening in communities. So much so that in the meeting it was mentioned that this letter doesn't necessarily require council approval in all communities because some communities have their CPOs working so closely with their police departments that an administrative letter outlining what's currently being done would be sufficient. That's not quite the case here in Hinton because we do have two separate command structures. And fortunately for us, we do have a council meeting today before the deadline. That's also not the case in every community. But if there are any questions about what happened on the meeting today with the minister, I am more than happy to answer those from council as they come up. And we've got Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess my first question, and then I very likely have others. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's just very quiet. I'm asking the secretary to just turn you up.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'll just wait until the volume's good, if you can let
You're
me know
good.
when it's good. Okay, brilliant. Have we received any additional communications from the federal government themselves or the United Command of the RCMP that confirms that the statements made in the webinar are in fact what's believed to be true across all partners? Or do we just have a deputy minister showing up and saying, you need to do this and you need to do it right now?
So no, there was no federal involvement in the webinar today, but it was Minister Ellis himself that gave the presentation there. So directly from the minister. I've not heard anything from the federal government. Now, my understanding from the meeting today is that the federal government is going to be funding overtime for these CPOs and police officers ostensibly to work towards this fentanyl crisis, but the details of that funding was as yet to be decided. So that is all I've heard from the federal level at this point. And then from the RCMP standpoint, again, Ms. Gray mentioned that our staff sergeant is still getting up to speed on exactly what it means on their end. They found out with as little notice as we did.
Yeah, so sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I could then express, I have a number of concerns. And certainly understanding that this is out of cycle for us as a community, you know, to come in on a Friday and say, well, it's, you know, you need to make a decision by the 19th. Councils in general don't make good decisions if they don't have A, all the information, or B, enough time to consider what the ramifications might be. We don't have legal opinion on how this impacts our employees. And I mean, that's just one potential outlook. Yeah, I'm deeply uncomfortable about this. I certainly want to support, you know, a Team Canada approach, but I don't even have any additional information that tells me that this is in fact a Team Canada approach. I just have the word of a minister. That's lovely, but I'd like to hear from the feds that this is the right approach. I don't have that in front of me right now. So again, I can't speak to whether or not this is the best way.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I guess the question I have, you mentioned that, you know, some councils are meeting after this due date to have this conversation. So is that an option for us as well to get some more information and have, you know, a conversation with this at our next meeting, at least to have a better understanding? Because, you know, I have the same reservations with this little information given one day or less than one day to make that decision. I mean, I realize that it may be operational, but how that affects our community. So what was that recommendation if councils were meeting the following after the 19th? What did the minister have to say about that?
Well, I'll be frank, the minister didn't seem pleased about the idea of a delay, and he reiterated a number of times that we are on a 20-day timeline. It was implied that the 20 days was from the date of today, and that we were facing an existential crisis of some sort. This is the planned operational response at this time from the province, and this is their ask of our community. From my perspective, operationally in our community, it's not really any change from what we currently do, and the minister is really asking for a letter saying we have these people to put towards the fentanyl crisis. And I would even suggest that responding with our numbers and our willingness to look into moving towards some sort of action without even having taken any action yet, because we don't know what the details are, I think that would be reasonable at this stage. I think it is important to support the initiatives in response to some of these foreign relations issues that we in Hinton have no ability to influence. But standing aside and on the team and standing on Hinton, I think is good for our community. It's good for everybody overall. And I think that there is a way for us to do this in a fashion where we can gather more information before we take any serious actions. CO Panasic.
Thank you through the mayor and to members of council. And just to provide a little bit more context, but I do have the authority to make this call myself. And I would argue that through the act, all municipalities in Alberta, that power would be delegated to a member of administration. The reason that this is in front of council is, number one, this is a very political issue. This is not, I would not make it on the basis of efficiencies or anything like that. This is a political response. That's why I think it's appropriate at this table. The other thing is, and I spoke to it before, is there's also a level of service implication. We don't know how deep that's going to go, but we do expect that there's going to be much less of a focus on municipal bylaws and probably a much greater focus on just supporting the RCMP. That doesn't mean that we're not going to enforce our bylaws. We still, will ensure that happens. I know a lot of the concerns are legal opinions on what this means for our employees. We will not agree to anything that's going to violate, their contracts or constitute constructive dismissal or anything like that. But those are the types of details that, we as administration can work towards. We just need to know if council's in support of those two questions and that political response to foreign relations. And the second being the shift away from shift in our level of service that we're providing. But the rest of those details, we will certainly obtain legal opinion. We'll look at whatever model makes sense for us to implement this, but they are still going to be our employees and they are going to still be under our care as a municipality.
Thank you, CO Panasic. Councillor Haas.
Thank you. I'm of the mind, I know that, and I know I hear what council is saying about being on the fly, but based on the fact of those words from our CEO, that this is administratively couldn't be a decision of his, and but having that political side of support, and the reassurance that, our CEO is not going to give over that program to us that benefit us. I don't know what the wording of the motion is, but if I could see what that wording is, please. So I'd like to move the council direct administration to draft a response letter to Minister Ellis confirming the town participation in the CPO command, or what is the? And if I could speak further to it, I think, maybe other organizations or other communities don't work as closely with our RCMP and the CPO, but the fact that we do work so closely together, even though they are two different departments, we still work closely together. I think this, as much as I hope this works with our relations to the South, I'm not sure, but at least this is an effort that is being made. So yeah, I'll see what the rest of council thinks, but I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to draft a response letter to Minister Ellis confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and request. Councillor Taylor.
My only suggestion would maybe to be added is something like, if you could, subject to us working out the details and, I don't know, an agreement or a memorandum of understanding. We need the details and those are going to get worked out. So hopefully those get worked out. That's having some say at the town manager said. That would be an appropriate addition according to what he said.
Would you like to make an amendment to the motion on the floor, Councillor Taylor?
Confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to the details being worked out. I don't know, subject to the details being worked out to I don't know what you said. Subject to an agreement being worked out with the town of Hinton that I can't come up with.
Um,
Councillor C. Panasic.
sorry, through the mayor to members of council. What if we said subject to a report back on the model used? For implementation.
Thank you, C.O. Panasic. Councillor Haas, this is your motion. Do you find this wording to be recommended? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, I understand from the CEO that that would be, but I think for purposes, for our understanding as a council with this decision, I think that's reasonable. So I would see this as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I would tend to agree, and based off of the, I think a lot of communities have a lot of questions on the details of this implementation. So this is reasonable. Council, is there any opposition to the amendment to change the wording of this motion on the floor? 2, the council direct administration to draft a response letter to Minister Ellis confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to a report back on the model used for implementation. Seeing no opposition, we'll go for discussion. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you. I'll be speaking in support of this motion, and my comment was just kind of that exactly, that I think this is a case of you're building the plane while you're flying it a little bit across the province. I think it's important that we show our support and also just trust the administrative process that goes along with this. I think having a report back on this model, we're not the only ones sitting around having these conversations, and it's certainly not the way we like to do business. Of course, we'd all like to have more information, but that's, we're not sitting anywhere with less information than anyone else. So I think showing our support politically is important, and also putting our appropriate faith in our administration to ensure that they're looking after both what's in the mandate as well as the needs of our community. But I'll certainly support the motion as it's worded.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's for administration, and if I'm missing something, please help me out. When I think of a CPO and what their job description is, for the most part in the community of Hinton, it's bylaw enforcement, directed through, previously it had been our fire chief, but moving towards the director of community services. And then I think about this mandate and what's been shared with me today. And it sounds like the potential is there to demonstrate to our neighbors to the south that we're marshaling forces to deal with, fentanyl as an example. And I think about my time when I was on the fire department, encountering drug labs and those sorts of things. That was a potential threat of the job, and you were trained, and there's a specific way of dealing with those things. But that was a known quantity. Police officers, firefighters, but my understanding is that's never been expected of the town of Hinton's CPOs. Can you confirm that for me?
The open asset. Oh, Ms. Way.
Through to the remainder of council, you are correct. Our CPOs do not have the appropriate training to actually go into a house such as this and encounter the fentanyl and do anything about it. With that said, where CPOs are in support to the RCMP on items like this are, joint enforcement. So whether that's a roadside, these things together. Other items we discussed, for example, is, doing the enforcement potentially on a drug house, right? So maybe they're not there to specifically arrest anyone, but they are there placing the tickets and moving things along, drawing the attention. So it's a significantly lesser role, but they do have the training necessary to continue to support through joint enforcement. At this time, they do not have any additional training or cert qualifications really to enhance specifically as related to fentanyl. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Mr.
Way.
Mayor, if I can go into queue for a follow-up.
You go right ahead with that.
Thank you. I guess, our CPOs, are they represented by a professional association, union, that sort of thing? And if that's the case, has their professional association weighed into the town of Hinton on what their opinion is, given this communication?
Ms. Way?
Through to Councilor McGinn and the rest of council this evening. The only communication we have back is from the Alberta Police Governance Association. I'd have to double check if CPOs are covered under that, but I don't think that they are.
Councillor Magoon?
So again, as far as it goes to the legal impacts or ramifications of sending off a letter with the province, have we gotten any advice from a legal perspective on what our obligations are as far as it relates to workplace safety, labor relations, et cetera, et cetera?
Ms. Way?
Through to Councilor Magoon and the rest of council this evening. No, the meeting was at 10 this morning. We haven't sought any legal on that. As Mayor Nissen alluded to, it did not appear as though the province wanted to give us much time to do those things. Additionally, I'm not confident that we'll receive a whole lot more direction from them in these 20 days. Thank you.
See open
So
ASIC?
So there are legal mechanisms that are outlined in the Act for CPOs and a few options that you have available. I mentioned it before, but your just a memorandum of understanding, which is a very loose agreement. There's joint force agreements that you can enter into with any jurisdiction that administrative believes is in the best interest of the municipality. That could be police agencies or nonprofits, nonprofit agencies. There's a wide variety of authorities that we can do this through that are baked into the legislation. Just a matter of making sure that, you know, we're following the legislation as it's written in whatever model we choose.
Thank you, see open ASIC. Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, at this point, Mr. Mayor, I'm not prepared to support this. I'd like to believe that this is the best procedure, but I haven't had the time. You know, due to other meetings, I don't even have a document in front of me. So I don't know what the town of Hinton's exposure is to this. I don't know if this is a best practice as it relates to occupational health and safety. There's a lot of questions I have, and to be frank, cowboy politics of just dropping a meeting in the morning and saying you have until the 19th to do this and you'll get it done because it's part of a Team Canada approach. I don't even necessarily know if I believe that. Until I hear from the RCMP, until I hear from the feds, the other partners involved that say, yes, please do this. I don't even know if the staff sergeant who's not here this evening to say that, yep, this is a best practice. I can handle this. I just don't have enough information, and I'm sorry, I feel like it's a manufactured emergency. If they really need this done, there's nothing to stop the province from saying, well, you have 3 weeks and you can get some information together. You have 2.5 weeks. But no, I'm sorry, by the 19th, no, that doesn't feel right. Something doesn't smell right. I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear what Councillor Magoon is saying. However, I guess my question to CL is what, and I don't want to say this disrespect, but quite frankly, if council were not to motion this evening and pass this, you could still do this. In your position is what I'm hearing is this is a more administratively, but our province is asking that our council also get on board with this. So that could be how we move forward, correct?
See open ASIC?
Through the mayor, I have the legal authority to move the CPOs wherever and be in charge of the administrative and management of that department. So I could, but just given all the context that we spoke about around this request, I won't do that without council's endorsement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, see open ASIC. Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, the motion on the floor is the Council Director Administrator from the Director of Secretary from Minister Ellis confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to report back on the model used for implementation. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, I'd like to build a question off of the CAO's last statement. So CAO, if you have the legal authority to do so, would you do so without understanding the legal ramification, the employer ramifications, the occupational health and safety ramifications, the professional association ramifications? Would you make this decision without any of that information in place?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, this is a relatively straightforward process. So I'm not really concerned if the particulars of an agreement we needed some additional details on. I would probably seek out some more information. But when it comes to, joint servicing agreements, even an MOU, whatever model we decide to attach ourselves with, that's probably at that point I would do it. But this is done, relatively often, either formally or informally. So, it wouldn't require a lot of from administration. It's really about understanding the model and making sure that you're just within your employment contract. If the new contract, or agreement constructs such a major change that it's now, a change to their contract, that's not our intent. So.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Councilor Magoon.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I'll ask one more question for the CAO, and then that should be enough. And it really is guiding my decision. I'm very flexible here. Does the CAO feel like there's any legal exposure to the town of Hinton in fulfilling this request by the province today?
The mayor, no, I don't. I don't really see any major risk here. But that could change because, administration, much like council, has probably more questions and answers at this point. So so we'll probably consult with some of our colleagues of what they're doing around the province. Maybe the province will come out with some more details. If at that point I'm at all concerned about the model that they're choosing or what they're asking of us, until we're comfortable with the legalities of it. But it's really dependent on how we actually implement it. And as of right now, we don't know what we're going to do or what model we're going to choose. So as of right now, no, I'm not concerned. I know we can do this in a legal way. It's just a matter if there is any further direction from the province or trying to force us into an avenue that we don't believe in.
Then,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, just to clarify then I will support the motion on the floor. And I appreciate the discussion and the questions from administration that have been answered. But I think more so that speaks to the professionalism of administration and their ability to answer those questions. I'm not happy with the method of delivery from the province. Emergent or not, there's better ways to deliver these sorts of things to councils across the province. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the letter states that it's a temporary situation. Would you probably know what temporary means? Would you?
No, we do not.
To Councilor Race, in the meeting today, the minister mentioned that in 30 days' time, they would be reassessing the result. Their hope is to get a message out within the 20 days' time for the tariff response, and then to reassess at that time based on what that circumstance was in that time. Thank you. Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to draft a response letter to Minister Ellis confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to a report back on the model used for implementation. Is there any further discussion from council? Councilor Race.
I have one question. Do the CPOs, are they aware of this?
Bill Panasic or Ms. Way?
Thank you, Mayor Nissen. Through to Councilor Race. There was some discussion this morning with the fire chief. Just the CPOs do still report to the fire chief. So I met with him today, and pending discussion here tonight, we'll be chatting with them tomorrow, given that their reporting structure may be altered.
But they didn't voice any comments, any concerns this morning?
Councillor Ace, thank you, Ms. White. Councillor Taylor.
So this is two CPOs we're talking about? We also have that position that's trained as a CPO, that's a coordinator. Does that affect that position too?
Ms. White?
Currently, that worker is not a designated CPO, so they would not fall within the scope of this letter. If we did designate her, then she would, but at this point, she'll remain as a coordinator at that desk,
He's not trained as a CPO.
not designated. My understanding is that she has received some training, but has not received her designation at this time.
Doesn't have the professional qualification required to fulfill a CPO role, I believe, is what Ms. White is trying to say.
Okay.
CO Panasic, did you have something further?
Through the mayor, members of council, we also have a number of bylaw officers, but they're really just administrative bylaw officers. So, for example, I believe our best has is technically a bylaw officer, so they can issue bylaw enforcement tickets through that office. It's just an administrative efficiency thing, but none of those are being requested or any bylaw resources. It's only those with the CPO designation.
Thank you, CO Panasic. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize if this has already been covered. I haven't seen this letter. I don't have access to my email yet. I do have questions. I have concerns with the reporting structure being the way that it's been outlined, that the CPOs would report to the RCMP staff sergeant. How does the command structure work? Who do they receive their direction from if that's the reporting structure?
To all of council, thank you for that question, Councillor Stashik. In my discussions with Staff Sergeant Fragamini this afternoon, ultimately, we're going to adopt a biweekly schedule wherein she will meet with the CPOs at the hall. Currently, they don't have the required security clearances to be unattended within the RCMP detachment. So she's going to come over, meet with them there. Their priorities will be discussed, logged, and then tossed up to my office. And then we do have to be reporting back to the province on this matter. If there's any discrepancy between municipal priorities and those of the RCMP, her and I will discuss those and move those forward as needed.
Ms. White,
If I could follow up.
go right ahead.
So, yeah, I appreciate that's kind of the structure, and that's the concern though, in the event that there's a conflict between RCMP priority and municipal priority, and RCMP is technically directing CPOs, how does that hierarchy work? And then in addition to that, this sounds like quite a bit of additional work for Staff Sergeant Fragamini. Is the RCMP going to be seeking any kind of compensation for the staff sergeant having to do this additional work that wasn't previously within her job description?
Ms. White?
Thank you for that question. Ultimately, someone mentioned it. There will be some funding, hopefully with respect to any overtime that's incurred. So likely what we would do with the CPOs is if there's a conflict between their priorities, the RCMP priority would be the item that is done on the overtime so that we can get paid or reimbursed for that time spent. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, Staff Sergeant Fragamini does not anticipate that it's overly burdensome at this time, but as CAO Panasic mentioned, as we get more direction from the province and fully understand the level of service impacts, we can make further adjustments at that time.
Is there anyone else in queue?
You go right ahead, Councillor Stashik.
So again, I still have concerns, and I have concerns with the wording of the motion that's before us. For this motion, I actually don't see any way that council could back out of it once the commitment's made today. The only thing that it's subject to is a report coming back on the implementation model. There's no additional decision of council, no additional direction of council. Simply the council receives a report so that they're informed about how it was implemented. unless I'm misunderstanding the motion.
I don't believe you are, Councillor Ostashik.
So that's concerning to me then. We're committing to something that we don't know the implications of. Administration. I mean, you guys are doing the best you always do to get as informed as you possibly can to be able to answer questions for us. But as has been indicated, administration is quite in the dark about how this is going to work moving forward too. So I'm still reluctant on putting council's stamp of approval on something when there's so many unanswered questions and no real way that I can see to be able to say, yeah, no, we have information now, we have a better understanding. This isn't something that we want to keep doing. I'm not sure I'm going to vote. I look forward to hearing what the rest of council has to say.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think being as how it's my motion, I guess, can I add something to it just to maybe, because I hear what Councillor Stashik is saying. So what I'm thinking is that the council administration draft of this to Minister Ellis confirming the town's participation. It went away. Participation in the CPR command request contingent on a report back on the model used for implementation. And the purpose of that is we're informing Ellis we're considering it, but it's contingent on that council receive that report back. And then, I mean, maybe we can add then an official decision based on that. And I'm looking for any, you know, inclusion of any other words or whatever. But my intent is to say basically to the government, we're not pleased with the fact that you've sprung this on us so quickly. We're considering it. We'll put a draft letter together, but we're not really making an official decision until administration comes back with a report. And we can make a more informed decision. That's what my intent is of adding that. Is that possible to CEO Panasic?
CEO Panasic?
Through the mayor. Yeah, this does change, I think, the nature of the motion, so I would just vote on it as an amendment, but
Okay.
Yep.
So I'll look for an amendment then. I guess the word contingent to the report back on the model used for implementation. The final decision. Subject to a report back on the model for implementation for final decision. If we can add then the final decision. Realize you're adding model used for. Sorry, Jen, if you can add implementation for final decision, please. Contingent to report back on the use for implementation for final decision of council. If I can, I guess, really quickly.
You can go right ahead, Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just express my frustration with our provincial government on this. We've now spent a lot of time on something that today that we're trying to figure out, and it's very frustrating that our provincial government does this to our municipalities on a regular basis on almost, this just being a more, I guess, quick example, I guess, of this. But however, at least this gives the opportunity to say we're considering it, but it's not a final decision yet. We need to understand more about it. So that's where I'm hoping the rest of council that this, I think, might help the rest of council with some of their concerns, and concerns I also share.
Councillor Haas. Councillor Stashik. Before we go to Councillor Stashik, Council, the motion on the floor is an amendment to the main motion that changes the wording to contingent to a report back on the model used for implementation for final decision of council. We are discussing only the amendment at this time. Councillor Magoon, I see you're in queue, but I've got Councillor Stashik first.
I appreciate the amendment that gives the opportunity for council to get some more information and then be able to make a final decision after consideration and additional thought. My question to administration, though, is I'm assuming that the minister was demanding the timeline that they were demanding because they need commitment from the communities to be able to go back to report to someone that they've got committed numbers from the communities in Alberta to be able to drive this forward. Is this going, if this amendment passes, is that going to be a strong enough commitment from the town of Hinton that the minister would actually be able to use that for whatever purpose that they need to use it for?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor, likely not the motion, but actually, Ms. Wade just sent me a very good suggestion is we can still issue a letter of intent that we're working on it. Working on the, I think that hopefully will be enough time, because even if we agree to it, it's going to take us some time to, get everything together, enter into a new agreement, those types of things. So think of just a letter of intent, we could issue alongside this. That would suffice. But I would say that the motion as worded is council isn't going to make an official decision until we know more information on the model that's going to be chosen.
Councillor
If I could
Stashik.
follow up, sorry, so that's not a firm enough commitment to the minister. If this passes as is, it's probably not a firm enough commitment.
Councillor Stashik, perhaps I can answer that one for you. The minister took looking for communities to send a letter saying, we have this number of CPOs, we are willing to work towards some sort of implementation. I do believe your question, if you're asking, is will this provide a letter that is sufficient for the minister's needs today? I believe the answer to that question is yes at this time. Likely this would come back from the minister in the future as they get more details out. But at this time, I do feel like this that was requested in the meeting today with the minister. If that's answering your question. It's not committing the personnel directly. They're not looking for personnel directly today. They're looking for the letters of support and the numbers for counting purposes.
Okay, if I could follow up then.
Go right ahead.
So I guess then my follow-up would be that understanding that I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not sure I agree. But again, I'm in the dark. And for that reason, I'm not going to support the amendment. And whether it passes or not, I'm not going to support the motion either. I would likely support a motion if somebody were to put it forward to submit a letter of intent, meaning that we can, once we get more information, then we can make the final decision. That this, I believe, is either not going to be strong enough for the minister's needs, or we're going to be committing to something without knowledge of what we're actually committing to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just based on the amendment on the floor, I'm wondering if admin can clarify, would that be contingent on when council receives that report, that it actually be voted on through a request for decision and supported, or simply by receiving the report, it's met the outline of the amendment on the floor? Because if it's just a matter of, well, we've received the report, now we can move forward, I'm definitely not in favor of that.
CEO Panasic.
Councillor Magoon, I'll just clarify if I'm meeting your intention, but I think that the way that the motion is worded currently is that council will make a final decision once this comes back. If what you're asking is that if we just say contingent on the report coming back to council, would that indicate a stronger level of intent to go forward with this.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, no, the way the amendment's worded right now, it says that essentially, in short, and I apologize, I can't see it. That a future report will be brought before council, but council sometimes receives reports simply for information, and then sometimes council receives reports for decision. So there's a difference there for myself, is that if it's merely council receives a report and that fulfills the conditions of the amendment, no, I'm not good with that. But if it involves a future decision of council to say that, yep, we support a model or we do not support a model, then I have a little bit more faith in that process. Otherwise, I'm kind of in the direction of Councillor Ostashik.
Councillor Magoon, it should be up. If you look at your voting device, you should be able to see the wording of the amendment. But to answer your question specifically, the wording of the amendment is contingent to report back on the model used for implementation for a final decision of council. So
Okay.
the decision of council is in the amended motion, or in the amendment itself specifically.
Okay.
CO Panasic, did you have anything further to add? We'll go to Councillor Chambers.
Thank you through the chair to the rest of council. I won't be supporting the amendment. I like the original wording of the motion. I think that what the letter's requesting, the second paragraph says he's formally requesting that you immediately begin working with your police leadership in your area, which we've done. And requesting the changes by Wednesday, February 19th, which is insane. I agree with that, but he's requesting that you respond to this letter forthwith to confirm your support of this initiative. So, I mean, I think we already are working in alignment with some of this initiative already, and I feel like we're getting into the minutia of things that we may not need to. It's not ideal, but I won't be supporting the amendment. I prefer the original motion that was put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Council, the motion on the floor is an amendment to the original motion that changes the wording to contingent to report back on the model used for implementation for a final decision of council. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question on the amendment. Councillors, please vote now. Councillor Race voting against by hand, and that motion is defeated with Councillor Hawes, Councillor Magoon, and Mayor Nissen voting in favor. That brings us to the original motion, unamended. That council direct administration to draft a response letter to Minister Ellis confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to a report back on the model used for implementation. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, and I apologize for belaboring. Have we, and I realize it probably has been asked, have we received any communication from any of the RCMP regarding their take on the province's request?
Ms. Way.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Magoon, through to the remainder of council this evening. No formal correspondence, just the brief conversation I had with Staff Sergeant Fregamini this afternoon, where she indicated, similar to Mayor Nissen, that they had only just received this correspondence as well.
No, so I guess, yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Yeah, no, I think bad decisions are rushed decisions. There's been a lot of good conversation around the table. I respect everybody's opinion, but in this case, I think I find myself more of the opinion of Councillor Ostashik. I can't support this. I don't have enough information. I lack the information that demonstrates to me that this is an emergency decision that needs to be made before the 19th of this month. So I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Stashik.
I'm just speaking again to it now that the amendment's behind us. as I indicated before, I'm not going to be supporting the main motion either. There's simply too many unknowns for me. I don't know what we're committing ourselves to, don't know what the implementation is going to be like. I just don't have enough information to be able to commit the town to anything at this point. As I said, though, if this is defeated and somebody were to put a motion forward to provide a letter of intent, I would very likely support that, as it would give council the opportunity to be able to commit once we actually have more full knowledge of what the implications are, and can vote from an informed position. And I can't do that today, so I can't support this.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Taylor.
I do support this because I keep thinking of the big picture. The big picture is threat of tariffs the first week of March. And it's not the provincial government that's doing anything bad to us. They're just trying to react to that and work towards that threat. And I do think that we have a pretty good working relationship with Sergeant Fregamani. Would I like to have all the detail before we do this? Yeah, but I don't think we have the time. We have to respond to this just like we responded to the lumber tariff a few minutes ago. So the first week of March, we got big threats coming, and this is one way that we can do something to help with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is a council direct administration to draft the response letter to Minister Ellis participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to report back on the model used for implementation. Councillor Race.
Mr. Mayor, to CAO, I hope this doesn't sound too simple, but right now is the provincial government just collecting numbers? Sending all the CPOs under the, umbrella of the RCMP, just collecting numbers so they can go back and say, yes, we collected thousands of we support this.
Theo Panasic.
Through the mayor to Councillor Race, I think they are looking for the implementation of this, and I think what they're doing is building a case that they can use to show that they're taking action on some of the priorities that have been listed in here. So, I think they are looking for this to be implemented and not just commitment. At that date. It's unlikely that we're going to have anything by that date, but we'll certainly send a letter saying initiative and we're working towards coming up with a way to do it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, once again, the motion on the floor is a council direct administration to draft a response letter to Minister Ellis confirming the town of Hinton's participation in the CPO command and control request, subject to report back on the model used. Any further discussion from council? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried 5-2 with Councillors Magoon and Ostashik voting against. Council, is there anything further for item 6.5 on the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing, we'll move to section 7, correspondence. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we accept correspondence and information.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is that council accept the correspondence package for information. Councillor Taylor.
I have a question on the RCMP report. The RCMP report indicates that we have 12.9 working members. But as you recall, information you gave us was that we were budgeting for 15.5 working members. So that's 2.6 short, or $500,000. That represents close to a $500,000 difference. And I guess it's too early in the year to see if that's going to be a long-term thing. But so far has that reduction in RCMP members going down 2.6. Was that affected by Brown stats in any way?
Ms. White?
Thank you for the question, Counselor Taylor. At this time, the only kind of stat that appears to be in any kind of decline is the violation tickets. We're slightly lower than we typically are at this point this year, or at this point in the year. However, Staff Sergeant Frankie has set some ambitious targets to make sure that we realign for this time of the year with her current staffing levels.
What did you say? Crime is up, crime is down?
Crime is
Pick
not
one.
up. The one challenge that we have had is our violation tickets are typically higher this time of year. So because of the reduced members, that's resulted in fewer violation tickets. That is off par from previous years. However, we've set some ambitious targets to be able to realign that with the average.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Criminal offenses per RCMP are still as per the report we were given 2 years ago.
Ms. White?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I would not confidently be able to refer back to a report from 2 years ago. I can certainly look into it and get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. White. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas?
Yeah, and just to confirm that reduction, it's due to the fact these are either spots that have not been filled or spots that are on leave for various reasons or whatever the case may be. Like this is not a reduction of members, but that's as a result of it. So hence why partly there may be less violation tickets out there, because we do have not a full slate of officers at this time, correct?
That's correct. I believe the report says 4 fully unfilled positions and 2 separate types of leave.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Thank you, Ms. Way. Council, the motion on the floor is that council accept the correspondence package for information. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further for section 7 of the agenda this evening? We'll move to section 8. CEO Panasic, are there any notices of motion this evening?
There are none.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. That will take us to reporting and council reports. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. So this Sunday, Ash will have their AGM. BBOC, I have a meeting tomorrow evening. We're looking forward to getting an update from the project, where we stand with the construction of that. And we've made some definite headway with the colder weather. And now we have the warm weather coming. So, but we'll get a update on that. Also still working on the Bayfair finding signs, but we'll be having that conversation. The other thing that I did attend real quickly is I attended the emerging trends, legal trends of municipalities on Thursday. So I think one of the biggest things I took from that, and I'm sure administration is well aware, but the changes to the FOIP Act that are coming. So basically, it was quite a shock apparently to the lawyers. They didn't think anything was wrong with the FOIP Act, but the government decided that they wanted to restructure it. So there are actually going to be 2 acts now instead of just one. A couple of things they did point out that were going to be somewhat of a plus is the time frame of when municipalities, once requested, have to provide that FOIP request. Has been extended, so we have a longer period of time to respond. They've also given more ability for municipalities to what they can deny for FOIP requests. So whether it's frivolous or fictitious or whatever that word is, but they've made that also part of it. But there's a lot of training that's going to have to happen. I know that the law firm said that they will be providing webinars to municipalities because they also too are learning a lot. Apparently the FOIP guy can no longer be the FOIP guy. He has to learn a lot. So, yeah, so those were some things that came from that. There was also a lot of conversation. I talked a lot about the schools and having, there's a lot of communities that are looking to increase school infrastructure. So they were talking a lot about how the provincial government wants to do up to 90. So if you want a new school in your community, you have to get agreements together. So, and then they had also the Bear Pit, which also has some very interesting things. One other thing I thought was interesting was liability. Apparently, there's been a lot of cases recently. One in particular, there was a signage that it was a curve that they felt it was the municipality's responsibility, and because it was an accident, tried to hold the municipality liable for that accident, but the courts were that request. So lots of different things that I learned. I always enjoy attending those because there's a lot of things you can take away from that. So thank you. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Chambers.
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Race. Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
That's a question. I'm getting repeated calls over access to pickleball in the schools. Do you have any suggestions on how to, what I should say? Like they're basically saying, I think they've been treated not well, and so our agreements maybe aren't working or something.
Seal Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, depends on which school. And it depends because we have one JUPA agreement in place. So the JUPA agreement we have in place is with Evergreen, and that was the school division that was never authorized school play in the past. We are the JUPA agreement with the Grand Yellowhead School Division has not been completed, so we're still operating off of the old joint use agreement for those facilities. So, but if they are having particular problems, I would filter that through possibly to them.
All right. I think they've already done that, but thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And for myself, Council, last week after our committee meeting, CO Panasic and I managed to secure a meeting with Minister Lowen from Forestry and Parks to regard our fire guarding and fire smarting applications and programs. And I feel that we had a productive conversation and connecting on how we can get some of our applications moving forward a little bit more quickly. I do believe that we are on the same page with our minister and wanting to get these things done quickly. And it appears that we came to a bit of an agreement that it is a bit of a process problem that we're running into. And we're looking forward to moving those things along. His ADM also mentioned to us that the intake process for Fire Smart granting is changing to a continuous intake process. So rather than getting it back from having to wait for a new intake period, we should be able to update our applications and get them right back in quickly. So hopefully that conversation leads to a little bit of movement on our fire guarding program. Now for reporting, CAO reporting, CO Panasic. Oh, sorry. Councillor Magoon, sorry, you got a question?
No question.
Oh, he didn't report,
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor. No,
Right.
it's all good. We're good.
Nothing to report from Councillor Magoon. Councillor Taylor, did you have a question here?
Yeah, on your report.
Yes.
Some question that I've been asking the last week or so is, are we doing fire guarding on provincial crown land? Or are we doing it on town land? And why would we be doing fire guarding on provincial town crown land? Shouldn't they be doing it?
CO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, we are doing it on crown land. Typically, that's where the fire guarding does occur, and that's typically where it's funded through for the visits. But to my knowledge, it's very rare for the provincial government to step up and do fire guarding in the municipality, as they have. One of the reasons that we exist as a corporate body is for public safety and to initiate that. They can provide the funding, but I don't think it'd be realistic to expect the provincial government to come in and execute on just Crownlands. The Pass area is a little bit different. That's a specific right of way that we've lobbied for them to come in and do the clearing on and have gotten some, some agreements and some commitments to do that. But, typically that's all the municipality who's responsible for that, for protection of their own community.
Follow up?
So that would be within the town boundaries.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you, CEO Panasic. And we'll go to Chief Administrative Officer reporting, CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing specific to report, but we are still having some network issues. And so, we do apologize to everybody, but we'll make whatever accommodations we need to. If you come in and talk to staff, we expect to have some communications out there soon on when everything is back up and running.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Councillor Hawes.
Just have a quick question on the status of the rec center sign. It's been up for a while, but it was not functioning. So I just wondered, what's happening with that project and when might we be expecting to see it up and running?
CEO Panasic.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, Councillor Hawes. So we are waiting for the spring so we can do a little bit of underground work to get the electrical to it. Do that once the ground thaws.
Ms. White.
CAO, we actually have great news on that. It was powered this weekend. So it was up and running this weekend. Thank you to our maintenance guys for doing a lot of really great work to get the appropriate grandfathering necessary for that type of electrical. The holdup now is, of course, when we had to wait for that grandfathering, that had to push back the schedule for the training to actually transpose images and messaging onto the kind of flat part of the board that would, have the scrolling message. So that'll occur through March, but the sign is functioning. It is working. It's just now training the staff to get messaging moved from inside the rec center out to the sign.
That's really great news, Ms. White. Thank you. Councillor Hawes, any follow-up?
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, that'll take us on to the section kind of our agenda this evening. Closed session. Council? Councillor Chambers. Ooh.
Motion that we move into closed session at 6:19 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Council, the motion on the floor is that council move into closed session at 6:19 p.m. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. Councillor Stashik in favor by hand, and that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. There shouldn't be. I don't think so. Shouldn't be.